This story happened to me when I was a student teacher for a high school. The school was relatively large, with a few thousand kids, so it wasn't uncommon for a fire drill to get pulled or anything of that nature. We had security at the school, but we had never actually had a lockdown before. It had always just been a drill. I remember it being a normal Tuesday afternoon. There was about 30 minutes left in political studies class, and I remember the day was going pretty well. My school at the time had a basement, which was really small and only really had a few rooms, so it was more like a hallway more than anything. It wasn't really used at all. It was meant for staff because there was an extra photocopier and a few other supplies that teachers could use. My classroom was next to the entrance of the basement, so sometimes the main teacher would get me to go down there and photocopy something for her. I was basically the only person that would go down there on a regular basis. I remember on this specific day, she asked me to go down and use the photocopier. I went down, turned on the one light, and photocopied all the paper necessary. I then used the little washroom that was down there. After getting inside, I was only in there for a minute when I heard the principal's voice over the loudspeaker. "We are in a lockdown. This is not a drill." He had a shaky tone to his voice, which quite concerned me. I was in my classroom, and I was stuck in that bathroom. I debated whether to go back to my classroom or not, but it was kind of far, plus the lockdown protocol was to not let anyone in the classroom once the door was locked. It was too big of a risk, so I decided to stay in the bathroom and hunker down. I figured since the basement was so small and isolated, no one would come down there anyway. There was an exit at the end of the basement that led to the parking lot, but I thought I was completely safe down here. All the power in the school shut off, including in the bathroom I was in. I knew this was serious now. This bathroom only had one bathroom stall. I went inside, closed, and locked the door. I could hear some distant sounds in the hallway. This is it, I thought to myself. I could hear footsteps getting closer and closer. They sounded pretty frantic. I was so scared. I could hear the steps getting closer and closer to the basement, until I heard those frantic footsteps come down the stairs. This is where I deeply regretted not going out the exit at the end of the hall. Eventually, I heard footsteps coming down the hall, then the bathroom door opened. Someone walked in. My heart was in my throat. I felt like throwing up at pure fear and terror. He walked over to the stall and just stood in front of it for a second. This was the end of me, I thought. I was for sure dead. The guy outside the door said, "I'm just hiding down here, don't worry." This gave me the biggest sigh of relief. I opened the door and we both hid in the stall. Now mind you, this particular bathroom in the school did only have one stall, and he was a pretty big dude. He was wearing ripped jeans and a plaid sweater. I had never seen him in the school before, and in my entire life for that matter. I'll be honest, he looked like he was in his late 20s. I thought it was weird, but at least there was someone there with me. I heard a buzz from my phone and I checked it. It was one of my friends who was also a student teacher in the school. He told me that someone walked into his class and stabbed his teacher. I was shocked. Wow, this was for real, I thought to myself. "Did you see the guy who stabbed him?" I texted back. He said I couldn't exactly tell, but all I know is that he was a big dude. That sentence wrenched my heart a bit. It couldn't be, I thought to myself. But that thought was in the back of my mind. A few seconds after reading that text, I felt the man grab me. He said, "Listen, kid, follow me or you're dead." I followed his exact orders. He grabbed me by the neck and walked me outside. We walked out of the exit at the end of the hall and towards the parking lot at a quick pace. I thought I was for sure getting kidnapped or killed. We began to walk closer and closer into the parking lot, until what I could only assume was his car. We were about 20 feet in the parking lot when we heard from behind, "Drop the knife." There was a slight sigh of relief. The police were pointing the gun towards the man. There were 3 cops, and the man knew he didn't stand a chance, so he surrendered his weapon and let go of me. At that moment, I felt like my life had been spared. Who knows what he would have done to me? The man was arrested shortly after letting me go and dropping the gun. As it turns out, he was an ex-student at the school. The teacher he stabbed was Mr. Barkley. Him and Mr. Barkley used to hate each other, and they even got into a physical fight at school. The kid also used to get bullied by students, and even Mr. Barkley would make fun of him. He came back to the school for vengeance against him. All I know is that if those officers weren't there, I don't know where I would be by now, or if I would still be alive. This story occurred 3 years ago, when I was in my senior year of high school. It was a normal day of just classes and hanging out with my friends. My school was quite a big school with 4,000 students, and no real bad things happened, besides the occasional fight that would break out. On this specific day, I had a driving lesson during my spare period, which is my third period of the day. This is going to sound odd, but I would normally keep my phone in my locker when I would go do these driving lessons, as to not get distracted while I was driving, out of a tendency to get distracted after feeling the vibration in my pocket. When the third block started, I headed outside to get picked up for my driving lesson. When I would go do these lessons, I'd be picked up in the neighborhood over from the school. I got to the area where I'd normally get picked up and stood there waiting for him to come. My instructor being a few minutes late was normal, but after 15 minutes passed, I was getting a bit concerned. 30 minutes later, and I assumed that my lesson was canceled because at most he was 5 minutes late. I headed back to the school. I walked through the front doors and went up to my locker where I last left my phone. It was weird. No one was in the hallways, and it seemed like all the classes were empty. Not a person in sight. I couldn't hear anyone. I got to my locker and put the code in, so it would open and I could get my phone. I remember that I was having a bit of trouble opening it, and then getting quite frustrated because I messed up a few times. When I was in the middle of trying to open it, I heard something to my left in the hallway. "Hey, buddy." I looked over, and about 30 feet down the hall, I saw some tall, skinny, deranged-looking man with long hair. He was wearing dirty jeans and a black hoodie. His eyes were so wide, and he was staring directly at me. His smile looked like it was from ear to ear. I didn't know humans could possibly make a face like that. It felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and I began to breathe heavily. His hands were behind his back, and he began to walk towards me slowly. I began to back away slowly as I was concerned what this man was going to do. After about 5 steps backwards, the man ran at me full speed. I yelled out of fear and ran as fast as I could down the stairs. I could hear his heavy footsteps behind me. He was chasing me and he was laughing the whole time. I'll never forget those sadistic laughs as he was chasing me down the hallway. I ran down the stairs and out one of the side doors of the school. I had never ran that fast in my life, and to my absolute horror, the man began to follow me out of the school. I played soccer for most of my life, so I was quite a fast dude, and I could run for long distances, but the man was so long and skiddy, it was almost like he was built for running. He kept up with me, which was pretty terrifying because I was considered a very fast guy. I ran towards the back of the school where the forest was. I ran into the forest and ran as fast as I could through those woods, trying to lose him. I had a good distance on him now. I dove behind one of the bushes in the forest behind the school to try and hide from him. Then I saw the man enter the woods. He looked around for me. He was looking around frantically. After he couldn't find me, he screamed at the top of his lungs in a fit of rage and ran off. I gave the police a very detailed description of the man, but he was never found. This was by far the scariest thing to ever happen to me, and I still get nightmares about his face. I hear those laughs in my dreams sometimes. They still haunt me to this day. Knowing that the man is still out there always leaves me with an uneasy feeling. I'm just happy that the man didn't find me and do some horrible things to me. This was by far the most terrifying thing to ever happen to me. I was a middle school teacher teaching 6th grade. I had been teaching for about 10 years at this point, and out of those 10 years, they were all in the same school. I can confidently say that we never had a lockdown drill or anything of this nature. It was a Monday morning. Everyone was tired and no one was really paying attention. It was the last day before spring break, so I could understand where they were coming from. Their attention changed all of a sudden when the lockdown alarm went off. The principal's voice came over the speakers, explaining that this was not a drill. Everyone's facial expression changed. I could feel the emotion in the room switch from happiness to fear. I did the usual: usher the kids to the corner of the room, turn off the lights, close the blinds, and lock the door. I was really nervous. We had never had a real lockdown before. It was normally just a drill. I never experienced a real lockdown, and I was nervous for what could happen. I told the kids to be quiet, and that this was serious. I told them that we couldn't fool around here, and they all understood. Not one of the kids made a sound. All of a sudden, I could hear banging on the lockers and doors in the hallway coming from farther down. The banging got closer and closer to the classroom until it was right outside the door. I began to panic now. I didn't want to believe what was happening was even real. Everyone's life was in danger, and I was in charge of the health and safety of those kids in my classroom. Whoever was outside started to bang on the door. He began to yell at the same time, "Let me in. Let me in. Please let me in." I told him to go away, and that's when he began to try the door handle on the door. When the handle wouldn't budge, the man became very angry and started to yell. He started banging the door, kicking the door, grabbing the door, doing anything to get into the classroom. I grabbed a book that was next to me and a pair of scissors in case the man managed to get through. I would at least have a better chance with these, I thought. I felt helpless, and that the fate of everyone in the classroom was in the hands of that door. He was kicking the door real hard, and I thought it was about to give out any second. We made sure to barricade the door with all the desks in the classroom, so that gave us that extra layer of security. The man outside was throwing his entire body into the door to get it open. With every hit, I could feel the gates of life closing slower and slower. Right as I thought the door was about to give out, the man stopped. I heard another voice from behind him say, "Dude, we gotta go." After that, I heard 2 pairs of footsteps run down the hallway, down the stairs, and out one of the school doors. I couldn't describe the relief I felt. I was so thankful that the door didn't give in. They never ended up catching the guys who came to the school that day, and nobody knows what their real intentions were. School was cut short that day, and everyone ended up going home. I heard from a few people that the guys got into the school pretending to pose as parents picking up their kids. That's when one of the people at the front desk noticed that a man had a knife in his pocket when they were walking away. That's when a lockdown was called, and the men began to run around the school trying to get into any room they could. No one was injured during the lockdown, and I think the main reason was because the police were able to respond in just over 7 minutes. Unfortunately, they were too late to catch them because the sound of the siren scared them off. From there on forward, we've had more strict security at the school to ensure nothing like this will ever happen again. I just get a little uneasy sometimes when I'm at that school knowing that I could have been killed right there. Definitely changed your perspective on life. I felt so vulnerable, so helpless. I'm just glad that no one got hurt from the incident and everyone is safe and doing well.